Let me ask you this question, because every time I call you, you are in one place or the other. Has the elections ended for you actually?
Well, as I told you, it is not just about elections. It's about governance.
Yeah.
And governance cannot end. And from where I operate, whether NDC is in power or NDC is out of power, my job continues. Okay. So it is not like ministers where when your government is out of power, you are out of work. We are full-time administrators of a political party. It is true when we are in power, there are certain things added responsibilities that you have to undertake. But when we are out of power too, there are other responsibilities that you have to, undertake, which may be undertaken by somebody else if we were in power.
Yeah.
Okay, so the job content and the volume of work does not change, considerably at all, whether we are in power or we are out of power.
But with the 2020 elections, you still have to, you're actively following cases that are in courts.
Sure.
I think recently, one of the MPs that you fought to get elected to win back that constituency, that MP essentially has been removed by a court. And you have to go back to a higher court to try to see if you can overturn it. When those processes are on, it's like I say, for you, the 2020 elections, matters haven't been settled yet.
In that respect, yes. The 2020 elections hasn't ended at all, because it is one of the worst, in fact, shall I say, the worst election that we ever had in this Fourth Republic.
The worst election?
Yes, the worst election.
In 2020,
yes,
several years after we started in 1992.
Yes.
You're saying it's worse than 1992?
Yes. 1992, in terms of election security and disagreement, 1992, how many people died? Nobody. Even where a military government was, leaving office with all the paramilitaries, with arms and all that. How many people died? It turned out that it was rather the opposition party that bent a constituency chairman of the party that has won. Bent our chairman, the chairman Imoro or whatever, may his soul rest in peace. And I think Kwasimintim or Efia. That's one incident. Even in an election where everybody thought that the whole heavens were going to come down crashing, it didn't happen. And then after results were declared, there were some attempted throwing of bombs at the airport. Nobody died out of that. But this is an election where even the compilation of the register witnessed 2 deaths, several maimed. And then the main elections itself, about 5 dead directly, several maimed, still recuperating from various hospitals and so on. And in all those elections, the arbiter, who was the electoral commissioner, was prepared to come out with answers. This is an election where the arbiter says, I have done it, I'm not responsible to answer any question of yours. You can go to hell and remain there forever. And then you have a Supreme Court upholding that position. And as we sit here, we have 6 different presidential election results. We don't know which to believe. It has never happened in our recent history.
For someone who has participated...
And then you have about 16 parliamentary elections disputes.
Yeah.
It has never happened. At times you hear 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 16. What type of election is that? And we are still struggling. And you have cases where in the past...
General, I think you may have to move closer to the mic for me.
Oh, sorry.
Yeah.
And you have cases in the past where when it is just about mistakes in addition of results, the leadership from Accra will just go to the constituency, take the numbers, add them up and say, this is the results. Finito. They don't sit in Accra and say, you can go to court. So this is the worst election that we have ever had under this Fourth Republic.
You have been involved in one of those instances where a full ballot box was kept at a police station for a long time. All they needed to do, I guess, was to get the political party representatives and then count it. But it became a matter of legal dispute. What do you think was wrong? What failed in terms of the supervision of the election from the Electoral Commission?
The Electoral Commission failed. And then the government in power, because you cannot divorce these things from the government in power.
Okay.
Because they are in charge of the security. So it has to do a lot to do with security challenges, and so that pushes into this quagmire. That particular election that you are referring to, the Sene West election, it needn't have gone to court at all if you have up and doing commissioners. You know, because this is not the first time there has been such a dispute. Afarajan would just have called maybe one of the supervising commissioners, go and look at what the situation is, and let's open the box and deal with it. But you have a situation where a political party whose operative engages in criminality by snatching a ballot box, and his attempt to get away with the ballot box, he's apprehended and the box retrieved. In the process, one seal was broken. Then the same party which sends its youth organizer to go and steal the box now turn around to say that because one seal has been broken because our man stole it, we cannot accept the contents of that ballot box. When everybody knows that it is the stronghold of NDC, and that is the main intention of the MPP operatives there, was that let us steal the box, go and destroy its content. It will be impossible for us to get, the results added to the tally so we can win without that station. That operation failed. They were apprehended. We who had our seal broken have accepted that in spite of the broken seal, we still have the Electoral Commission seal there, and we have the MPP seal there. So we are okay with it. Let us count. Then you say, no, I won't agree. So you rush to court. And even before that case could be heard, that your youth organizer was apprehended, prosecuted, and jailed for stealing a ballot box. And then the same lawyer who defended that youth organizer in that stealing case, now comes to court again to say that the contents of the box should not be counted. You see, there are so many absurdities in this thing, and it's all because you have a government that does not believe in democracy. They talk about democracy, but they never believe in democracy.
They talk about democracy, but
but they don't believe in democracy. They think that governance is about pretense.
It's about pretense.
Yes, pretense. Just say anything to fool the people for the time being and keep them hoping in perpetuity, where failed promises are replaced with other juicier promises, and then you keep taking the people's mind away from promises that have failed. Somebody has said that politics is about how to promise the people and how to fail them without letting them know that they have been failed. So that is what I never believed in that thing, because I thought that how can you promise and fail people and then they will still be following you and thinking that they have not been failed. MPP has demonstrated this so clearly.
That is possible.
And that's what we are all witnessing. You promised to build 88 hospitals in 1 year. Clearly, they couldn't lay foundation for one. Instead of accepting blame, they now come around to tell you that we are now going to build 110 hospitals in 18 months.
111, actually.
And 111, you know. And then people are still believing and following. What's wrong with us? Well, and then you have a place where, you know, the sword cutting was done for the beginning of the 88. Now, 2 years later, nothing has happened to the place. They go and clear the place again and organize chiefs that we are now going to cut sword for 111. And you have people standing there and applauding. So in many respects, any group of people deserve the government they have.
Are you suggesting that we deserve what we are getting currently?
Otherwise, why should they be in power? We deserve what we have. If our attitude is that when you fail us, we become happy, we are following you, who would not aspire to fail you? If our attitude is that we will not assess the contents of the promises people are making, their feasibility and all that, and we just want to hear and follow promises that are juicier, then everybody will stop implementation and begin thinking about creative ways of promising so that they will be getting the votes.
Having said that, I keep reading messages from some of your supporters and sympathizers who say actually one of the biggest weaknesses in this election was what they see as an NDC that seemed not to have anticipated what happened.
Why? NDC knew exactly what was going to happen.
You knew they were going to use guns?
And that was, sure, but we never stopped talking about it. The only thing we didn't do was to also recruit and arm with guns so that by now the nation will be in flames. But we felt that, look, when you go to the Bible, there was some King Solomon story where two women were fighting over one baby.
Yeah.
And then King Solomon said, bring a cutlass, I'm going to split the baby into two, give you half, give the other person half. Then the one who wasn't the mother of that baby said, yes, that will be very equitable. I want half of that baby. I won't allow it. Then the real mother said that, no, I won't allow my child to be killed. So if you like, give the child alive to the other woman. When the child grows, he will come back. So King Solomon now realized who the mother of the child was. So that is the same scenario that played out.
Okay.
If we had thrown caution to the wind and said that we know this is what MPP is doing, let us also arm ourselves to go and face them. By now, me and you may not be sitting here discussing this. At least we have a country in one whole piece, except that it is badly governed. So we have something to improve upon. And that is why we are there. So why? Ayawaso West Wogon came. We saw it. We warned about it. When the president didn't do anything and allowed that impunity to happen, we kept warning. When they were recruiting party vigilantes into the security services. We knew what they were going to do in the elections. But you ask yourself, having known this, what will be your response? Your response is to appeal to the good sense of people, to defy the odds, make the sacrifices to go and cast your vote. And by and large, majority of Ghanaians listen to us. They cast their vote. And even after casting of the vote, this brute force descended to change things. You know, I was surprised when John Boadu was denying having conceded that NDC had won the parliamentary elections. You saw his video?
Yes, I saw it.
Yes. You see, and these are the type of people we are dealing with. Even when they say yes today, tomorrow they say we never said yes. They knew it. They knew we had taken, at least 141 seats or so. But they say it is not on. Let us use force.
But did you anticipate that they were going to try to take away seats that were clearly won? Forcefully. That aspect.
Otherwise, why would they be training and arming their people? And we are not in government. We don't have access to it. When they broke into a state armory and lied to Ghanaians that, some Togolese, whatever, homeland group had broken into the state armory and stolen weapons. Didn't I address a full-blown press conference telling everybody that this is a government-managed thing? They want to find a way of taking state arms to arm their militia for the purposes of intimidating people in the election. The press conference is there, the clips were all there. And I showed a document which contained the list of weapons that have been taken with their ID numbers. Nothing happened.
But in this election, it was not the usual militia we're used to. It was actually police. People were dressed in police uniforms. And
how do you know whether they are police or they are not police? That is another matter.
But they were
if
uniformed.
Somebody comes and but didn't you hear that police uniforms were being manufactured and military uniforms were being manufactured here, not through the authorized sources? You know it. And so that's why we kept using the word embedding of party militia into state security. We never stopped using that word. And that is how it was demonstrated. So they went, invaded the place. I mean, Ayawaso was gone. Were they not in vehicles marked clearly, boldly police? When the IGP came, what did he tell the public? He said he didn't know about that vehicle. It is not from his stock. Yeah. Anyway,
I was just trying to lay the foundation for why we've gotten to where we are.
Yes.
So having done that, now you are now proposing some reforms.
Yeah.
So I just wanted to understand the basis for the reforms you are proposing. Why did the NDC feel it necessary to set up the committee to look into the entire electoral system? And some of the reforms you are proposing, I am sure that if things were different, perhaps if it was the former administration at the EC, you would not be making a proposal about IPAC, because IPAC seemed effective then. What has happened that had led you to ask for this to be done?
There is a saying that if it is not broken, it's not fixed. So you don't, when you buy a brand new Toyota, and then from the showroom you take it to Kokompe or someplace to get it fixed. The fitters will recommend that you go to Pantine to fix your mind first. You understand? They will think there's something wrong upstairs. So society devolves through correction of mistakes, bringing on board new ideas to address emerging challenges.
Okay.
That is how society evolves. Okay. So democracy is an organic thing. It's not as if when you establish a constitution and democratic institutions, then full stop, you have arrived. So democracy is here, and then you go to bed. Democracy doesn't work like that. It continues growing, and it has to be nurtured. The fuel is citizens' activeness and engagement in the democratic process. That is why we say government of the people, by the people, for the people.
Yes.
So there must be active citizens' engagement. So every citizen, whether corporate citizen or individual citizen, human beings, you have, living in a democracy, you have a responsibility of looking at the circumstances around you, find out what is wrong, and then contribute your quota in fixing it. That is the background we are coming from in proposing these reforms. Okay. Everybody knows that this election has taken us years back on our democratic journey. So you ask ourselves, we can rewind, we can reverse history. We can't complain over spilled milk. Okay. And in life, it is not about the number of times you fall, but what is important that you rise up stronger anytime you fall. Okay. And so if there is this aberration in our democracy, should we throw our hands in the air and say that once upon a time we were the shining star of democracy in Africa, then somebody came and destroyed it, so we are no longer interested in democracy? What will go into will be worse. So we must find ways of making corrections in our democracy. So our contribution as a political party and the individuals within NDC is that let us start some discussion about the way forward, with the hope that people will learn from these immediate past experiences, and then will now contribute for society to chart a better path so that we can restore our democracy and our national dignity to where it used to be. That is why we decided to work on reforms. You cannot sit there and be complaining, things are not right, things are not right, things are not, when they tell you, how do we put them right? I don't know, but things are not right. That is not the work of a good citizen. So if you feel that things are not right, you bring your views as to how to correct things you believe are not right. And so that's how come we put together a committee of experts to go and study our electoral system as we have it now. Do what we call situational analysis to identify where the problem areas exist, and then to try and formulate proposals that, in their view, could help solve those problems. So that is the work that is ready, which we have submitted to the nation and to the appropriate institutions that should be working on it, so that we instigate the debate and get everybody involved. So where collectively we believe that this proposal makes sense and we think that it will address this existing problem, and we all bring our collective voices to bear, the change that we are looking for will happen.
How long has the committee been working?
Oh, it's been working for, I think it worked for about 2 months or so. They did
quite a comprehensive job.
Yeah.
But to you, or to the NDC, what were the main problems you identified, not only from these elections, but from the whole structure that has been in place for a long time?
Yes, we identified problems, and as I mentioned them, I believe that you can be our witnesses as well, and listeners can be our witnesses. First of all, is it true or not true that the Electoral Commission, who are the umpires of the election, there is always controversy about the appointment of commissioners into the Electoral Commission? Is that true or not true?
Yeah, that's accurate. From Afarijan to Charlotte Osei to Jean Mensah, yes.
There's always that controversy.
Yeah.
So should we leave it there like that? We think that it is a problem that we have identified that bedevils our democracy.
Okay.
So if we want the democracy to grow, you don't do the same things the same way and expect different results.
Yeah.
So you must think out of the box to find out how we can address that particular problem. So the appointment and acceptance of commissioners was an issue, because people must believe in the impartiality of a referee before any match.
Okay.
If from the beginning one party or one team thinks that this referee is what we call in Ghana referee contempo, no matter what happens, even if they win, they will still think that the referee is bad. You know, that was what happened in Charlotte Osei's case. Even MPP, which says Charlotte Osei was biased, when they won, they still felt that no, it is a bias, so she must be removed and all that. So it's a problem that we need to address. So that is one area. Then the whole area of
before you move there, you're not talking about only the chairperson. You're talking
no. I'm
all
talking
the
about commissioners.
Even the ones that the one that we don't pay, we don't hear a lot from.
Appointment of commissioners.
Okay.
Because in our scheme of things, you have 3 executive commissioners.
Okay.
And 4 non-executive commissioners. They are the people you don't hear of always. The 3 executive commissioners, apart from sitting together with the other 4 to take major decisions, they run the day-to-day affairs of the commission. So they are full-time commissioners.
So that's the chairperson
and the 2 deputies.
Okay.
So that's why you get to hear them always. The others, they are like part-time commissioners. They will come to, when there is a major decision, they come to work. If there is no a major decision and they are assigned some duty to perform behind the scenes, you will not be hearing about them. Yeah.
They're all part of the decision-making body.
They are all part of the decision-making body. Okay. They are all commissioners. Okay. We have a 7-member commission. And there's a reason why we did it. That's why I'm saying any day you call me to discuss the Constitution and other things, we may have time to go into it. Okay. So the appointment of commissioners has been an issue. And the major one has always been the appointment of the executive commissioners.
Okay.
It has always been an issue. So moving forward, there must be suggestions as to how to handle that one. Then you come to registration and regulation of political parties and their qualifications to contest elections and all that. Hasn't that one also been an issue?
Yes.
During Charlotte Osei's time, during Jean Mensah's time, and all that. I believe during Afarijan's time too, there were some aspects of it. So it's a problem that we need to
the qualification
confront.
Of people to vote.
No.
To register.
Political parties to contest elections.
Okay. The political parties issue, as of that one, has been an issue that will not go away.
It should go away because we are not thinking hard enough to find solutions. Okay. So we have identified that area as a problem, and we have proposed a solution. We are not saying our proposals are sacrosanct, they cannot be changed, and so on. You must work with something.
Okay.
So we have put them forward as proposals. In the discussions, some of them may get refined, adopted, dropped, and so on.
Okay.
But something must work. I mean, in the Consultative Assembly, not many people knew that we already had a document, a proposed constitution.
Oh, okay. At the time when the consultation there was already a proposed constitution.
There was a commission that was put together to propose this and that. It was a committee of experts. So they sat together and put together a proposed constitution that became the working document of the Consultative Assembly. But at the end of the exercise, when you today you take the constitution, the one with 1992 constitution, and you compare it with the proposal, they are completely different documents. Completely different. The constitution was reshaped and in several ways. Okay, so you cannot begin doing some review without a working document. And so we thought that there was a need to propose a working document.
Okay.
Well reasoned out document, so that we put it forward for some debate to start. That is how you get change in a democracy. Okay. So we think we have made proposal that, look, when you are, you have an electoral commission that is already very burdened with the conduct of elections. If you add to their functions the duty of registering political parties and monitoring the political parties against the benchmarks that have been established by political parties laws and other things, they will focus more on what they consider to be their core mandate, because their core mandate of delivering free, fair, credible elections is a constitutional mandate, which is a higher mandate. And then, apart from that, the enabling legislation that established the Electoral Commission itself, that is the Electoral Commissions Act, is also their mother legislation that defines their functions and duties clearly.
Okay.
This duty of registering and monitoring political parties and all that, and regulation of political parties, was an additional duty that was imposed on the Electoral Commission by the political parties law.
Okay.
Okay. So
not in the Constitution.
No.
The political parties law.
Law.
Okay.
So you don't need to change the Constitution to take that duty away and assign it to another body.
Okay.
All that you need to do is to change the political parties law.
Okay.
And when you take there are several institutions like that. In fact, in ministries, when you create ministries, for instance, Ministry of Youth
and Sports now.
Youth and Sports. There are times it was Ministry of Education and Youth.
Yeah. Yes.
Then education was seen to be their main focus, and nothing was happening on the youth front. And they say, let's take the youth and let's add it to sports. Now people are focusing on sports
and leaving the youth.
So there's always a weaker this thing when you go to Ministry of Food and Agriculture.
Yeah.
Their whole focus is on agriculture.
But the food aspect is not.
So, SHRAJ, Human Rights, Commission for Human Rights and Administrative Justice, they focus on administrative justice, human rights, and you don't hear about their anti-corruption function. It's been relegated to the background. So there are discussions that we think that we need an exclusive, anti-corruption institution and then we will leave SHRAJ and so on. So in that same vein, we think that if you had an office for the regulation of political parties, If you want to register a party, you go, they get you registered. These are the conditions. They are full-time monitoring the performance of the party against the requirements that you have to satisfy. So when you are getting close to elections, nobody will tell you that you have been pre-qualified to contest elections.
Okay.
So that pronouncement will not have to be made by Electoral Commission,
Okay.
which is performing an impartial duty. If they have to perform an impartial duty of running elections, and they begin telling some of the teams that you cannot play and all that, it raises issues of conflict and all that. So we think that moving forward, if we have another body that will do it, and this is a practice that is practiced all over the world in many places. There are some places where...
So you're not suggesting something new?
No. There's a political party. In some countries, political parties are registered by the registrar of companies before they come to participate. So the registrar of companies will monitor what work they do and all that. So it is just Ghana and a few countries where the commission that is to run election also registers political parties. And the problem it at times generates is that, particularly with IPAC, if Electoral Commission proposes something at IPAC and the political party is seen to be taking a position against Electoral Commission, the next time they say you are not qualified to contest elections.
Oh, okay.
You understand? If you support their position, even publicly, without having a political party, next time you walk to their offices, you want to register a political party, within 48 hours, you have your certificate that you have a new political party to come and join them. I don't think it is a neat thing to do. So that is what we are proposing.
So
and then
a different body to regulate, register
and regulate political parties.
So that body would decide which party is qualified to contest elections or not. Okay.
Precisely.
Mm-hmm.
You understand?
Yes,
is that
that's
not
clear.
a good thing?
Yes.
Is that going to help NDC exclusively in winning any election? It is just going to help the country. Okay. Now, you have another controversy, always perennial controversy about the compilation of voters' register. Is that also not true?
Yes, that's an
So should we sit there and allow that thing to continue? We must have solutions. And so we are saying that, look, let us find a way of getting a register which everybody believes in. So we save ourselves of killing the people during registration, killing and maiming people during registration. There was a time we could not have a permanent register. In fact, that other register that was replaced with the current one, it was intended to be a permanent register, which will be building up.
The 2012 biometric.
Yes. Somehow, for no genuine reason, they decided to award contracts, procure new equipment, do a new register, and so on. Whatever it is, we have a register now. Now, how do we solve the problem of always throwing away the register? Said that the reasons why the register gets thrown away every 7 years or 10 years has been that the register is claimed to be bloated with names of dead people. And the laws as they exist now do not empower the Electoral Commission to delete anybody's name from the register by itself. There's a laborious process where the register is exhibited and the relatives of the dead people will go and identify and present documentation, death certificates and all that, to go and tell people that, look, this name must be struck out before the Electoral Commission is empowered to strike it out. That was happening at a time when we didn't have Ghana card. Now everybody has Ghana card. So their identification is easier. And so we are proposing that the Electoral Commission should be given the power, the law should be amended to empower the Electoral Commission by itself to go to court with evidence about people they have identified who are no longer alive. The court will look at the evidence and empower them to go and delete those names. So you don't have to organize a whole exhibition exercise throughout the country and all that. Is that not a good thing for us?
The Electoral Commission
by itself.
By itself.
We are not saying they should just go into their data and delete, because checks are what makes democracy function. If you allow them the free hand to just go and delete whoever they believe is dead, one day some presidential candidate will not find their name there, and then the Electoral Commission would have declared you dead before you appear to come and file your nomination. You see, so we are saying that. But there are records now. You have the Ghana card. We have births and deaths registry. We have the SNET biometric data and other things. When people are dead, it is known by SNET. If they are workers, they were pensioners and all that. So if Electoral Commission is able to gather evidence from these credible sources, they can present them to court for the court to testify that yes, indeed, they are genuine records. So we have given you authority, go and delete them. So it contributes towards cleaning the register. Okay. Having dealt with that, then the population keeps on changing. People get older and others die. So somebody who was not entitled to register today, next year will be entitled to register.
Yes.
Should he or she wait till the Electoral Commission declares a 2 weeks period in which alone they can register? We say it's never done in many places where you have citizens' identification data. So if you have the citizens' identification data, which contains everybody's date of birth and all that, when you are 18 years and you go to the Electoral Commission, it is easy to verify that you are indeed 18 years. And so they can register you in a continuous manner. To be organized in a system where there will be checks. Okay. And we are capable of doing it so that gradually we can phase out this periodic declaration of registration period and all that.
Two very interesting proposals. The first one where you say they should be empowered to maybe identify some names based on evidence that they will provide before a court. So you are saying that whatever evidence they have that those people are dead should be taken to a court?
Yes, for the court to verify. Otherwise, if somebody goes to delete, I'm sure by now somebody at the Electoral Commission would have deleted my name that I don't exist. So there must be a verification by a court. It is very important.
Okay, so that one. And then there's the one about registration, because you're talking about the periodic, the continuous registration process. The last time that was raised, some of the political parties, even there were some people from within your party who said monitoring will be difficult. That particular aspect, it will be quite difficult to do. If you are saying the Electoral Commission should just go and do continuous registration, means that at any point in time anybody can walk in there, register. How do you check to see if the EC itself is not putting names in there?
You see, the laws themselves have long provided for this continuous registration. And since Afarijan's time, it has been part and parcel of the IPAC reform proposals, which we've been working on. During Charlotte Osei's time, the equipment was procured
for the continuous registration.
It was that equipment that was being misapplied to this limited countrywide registration, which we complain about. Electoral Commission under Jimensa will not listen. So they applied the equipment for the wrong purpose, only to come and say that the equipment is not functioning. The equipment was not procured for
for the
you know,
mass
registration.
periodic registration.
It was procured to be installed at district offices of the Electoral Commission for the purposes solely of continuous registration. And the law allows the IPAC and stakeholders to develop the protocols for the continuous registration so that there will be checks.
Okay.
We had developed those protocols there. They already exist.
Okay.
Okay.
So there are protocols for continuous registration.
We have
currently.
developed them currently, except that this Electoral Commission decided not to use them. When they came, whatever stage we were with our reform, you know, after the Supreme Court ruling in 2013, Afarijan advertised for everybody in the country, every citizen, stakeholder, to propose reforms.
Okay.
We are going to undertake reforms. Elections are not for Electoral Commission, they are for everybody. They are not for political parties alone, they are for everybody. So every citizen of the 30 million, if you have any ideas as to how to make our electoral system better, bring your proposals.
Okay.
Okay. So civil society organizations, traditional authorities, even officials of the commission itself, some district officers of the commission who had been practicing in these elections and they know where there are loopholes, they also brought up proposals.
Okay.
The IEA, which was chaired by Madame Jim Mensah at that time, organized we had something called the Ghana's Political Parties Program.
Yeah.
We did fora and, you know, collated views.
Okay.
And proposals signed by Jim Mensah, signed by me, signed by all others, McManu and others, and presented them to Electoral Commission as our proposals. And then Electoral Commission did not do that alone, brought in other proposals. So we got this document
Proposals for electoral reforms.
Yes.
That was championed by the IEA.
By this one is for the whole commission nationwide.
Okay.
The ones that were championed by IEA, this is a communique that issued out of it. The full report is there, but this is the communique. Just look at, flip through and see the signatures and read the names there.
The signatures is November, 10th day of November 2013. First signatory, Mr. Johnson Asirin Ketia, National Democratic Congress. Mr. Peter McMahon, New Patriotic Party. Alhaji Ahmed Ramadan, People's National Convention. Mr. Abu Fogo, Convention People's Party. Mr. Kofi Asamoah, Progressive People's Party. Dr. Henry Latte, Great Consolidated Popular Party. Mr. David Esi Bunya, who is United Front Party. Mr. Jacob Osayebua, who was an independent candidate in 2012 presidential elections. Mr. Samuel Ekwama, National Commission for Civic Education. And Mrs. Jean Mensah, IEA, Ghana.
Signed.
Signed.
Can't you see her
Yes,
signature?
they've all signed, yeah.
Yes.
Everybody has signed.
If we had time,
It would have gone
we
through.
would have gone through. But let me refer some of the things that the introduction, as part of its commitment to deepen democracy in Ghana, the Institute of Economic Affairs and Ghana's Political Parties Program held 2 workshops to discuss Ghana's electoral system. The purpose of the workshop was to propose reforms to Ghana's electoral system in the wake of the challenges that emerged after the 2012 general election. The first workshop was held in Koforidua Capital View Hotel from 8th to 10th November 2013. The theme for both workshops was towards transparent and acceptable elections. And then the others were there. The lead resource person, Mr. Gabriel Puaman, a private legal practitioner, presented a paper that identified the challenges in Ghana's electoral system in the areas of the role and powers of the Electoral Commission in the conduct of elections, biometric voter registration, voting and documents of polls, e-voting, election security, election petitions, and all this. Does the name Gabriel Puaman ring a bell?
The Supreme Court judge.
He's a Supreme Court judge now.
Yes.
You understand? So this is something, and when you look at the names, the signatories, you may not
those are
understand them well, but you have key political parties, civil society organizations, and all that.
Yeah.
And so, and the recommendations that we brought, which never got implemented. The Electoral Commission should conduct sustained and continuous voter registration subject to periodic rigorous auditing of the registers to maintain the integrity instead of the one-off registration of voters. That was one
That's
of
a continuous registration.
That is a continuous registration process. You see, there should be a national collation center which should be open and accessible to as many members of the political parties, the media, civil society organizations, election observers as possible, but under controlled security in order to enhance the transparency of the national collation system. If you see NDC proposing a more transparent collation system, is that not the same thing that we have agreed on and signed to? The Electoral Commission should be more open and transparent in its relations with the political parties and the general public, as well as in the discharge of its responsibilities to increase public trust and confidence in the electoral process.
Okay. Okay.
Is that not it? So if you were proposing this one in civil society, and now you are the head, and you are saying you are not answerable to anybody.
When at the time the proposal was for you to be more open.
Yes. And you were pushing it on Afarijan and the others to do. Now you have the opportunity to implement your own recommendations. You just do. So if there were time, when you go through, you will see that a lot of these things we are proposing are actually not new.
Okay.
Because after Electoral Commission compiled all these reform proposals, you have CDD, this is their proposal. The IEA one was the one I've shown you. Mm-hmm. You have CODU, you have individual political parties, Great Consolidated Popular Party. There are even, I saw there were proposals from some traditional councils, and name them, So Afarijan compiled all these things meticulously. And what did he do? He didn't say Electoral Commission alone should go and sit there and take decisions. He called IPAC and said, what should we do with these reforms? Then we all agreed that let us put together an electoral reforms committee of IPAC to go and look at the proposals to find out which are acceptable and which are not. So the Electoral Reform Committee members that were proposed, these are their names.
So the members of the Electoral Reform Committee, Mrs. George Nampokwa-Mankwa.
Yes, from EC.
Yes. Mm-hmm. Mrs. Rebecca Kabuki.
Also from EC. So two representatives of EC.
Okay.
Then political
Mr.
parties.
Johnson Nketia, yourself,
one
Mr.
person
Kobina
from NDC.
Ejepon.
General Secretary of MPP.
Mr. James Kobina Bonfe from the CPP.
In fact, all the other minor parties, they came together to elect two people to represent them. So on this occasion, they elected
Kobina Bonfe and Enin Kofi Addo from the YPP.
Yes.
And then there's Dr. Ransford Jampo of the IE, who at the time was at the IE.
Civil Society.
There's Mr. Kwesi Jonah from IDEC. And Dr.
Society.
Franklin Odro, who is of the CDD.
CDD, yes.
And then there's Mr. Christian Osupari.
The secretary is from the Electoral Commission. Yes. So this is the Electoral Reform Committee.
The committee that was set up.
Yes, which sat to consider these proposals.
Okay.
Evaluated them. And then distilled them into a report which you are holding.
This one, okay.
Yes. And so this report was signed to as a consensus position for the reform of our electoral system moving forward.
Okay.
Some of the proposals required constitutional amendments, some required amendment of laws, and some required administrative changes at the Electoral Commission and so on. Okay. So Electoral Commission, after the report was presented, they held meetings to review it because they have the mandate. Okay. And then came out with a roadmap, told us which of them were not acceptable because they will conflict with certain duties that they have. Okay. So this one, they say this one is not on. This one, it should be on. I remember a particular one which we haggled about. The political parties were on one side and the commission was on the other side. Was about no verification, no vote.
Okay, yeah, I recall.
Yeah. We felt that if we stuck to the no verification, no vote, it will clean our elections of the possibility of anybody voting who is not qualified to vote.
What verification then meant?
Verification meant that if your thumbprint is not accepted by the machine, you are not allowed to vote. That was the position of Electoral Commission. We know, but then the Electoral Commission was saying that they have a constitutional duty to make sure that every Ghanaian of 18 years and above is allowed to vote.
Okay.
And the machines we are using, no machine is 100% perfect.
Okay.
So there will be at least, and the machines we were using at that time, their performance rate was 99.6 or so, or 0.4.
Okay.
So they were saying that, but you have 0.4 failure rate of the machine. And those people are also Ghanaians. So if we allow this and we don't make provision for alternative manual verification, then we would be breaching our constitutional duties. And then we said that the small opening that you will create for manual verification can be abused to change the outcomes of the results of the whole 99 point something. So we are prepared to leave and move without the 0.4. You see, so that was a typical example of a conflict. So eventually, because there was that disagreement, we couldn't implement that. But many of the reforms, and the Electoral Commission undertook at IPAC that once we have all agreed on this consensus means of reforming our activities, every month they will give us an update of the status of implementation of the reforms. And they started under Farijan. Charlotte Osei came to continue. Then all of a sudden there was a reconstituted commission, and they threw all these things away and decided doing things which were even counter to these consensus positions we have developed. And we kept warning them that, look, we have treaded this path before. This was where it led us to. That is why we suggested ABC. So if you go back to do it, the results you will get is Z. They never listened. And they sort of got the population to understand that we were being too difficult. We wanted to impose our will on the commission and so on. So we had to move along to a point where we had these results with 8 people dead and these messy outcomes where the commission itself kept changing their results for 6 times. So all these things were there and they were available for them to implement. They decided, for whatever reason, let us put this aside. We are new people. Let's do the things in our own way. Unfortunately, you were new people who had not done anything about elections before. That's why we are. So the documents we have done, many of the reform proposals were just picked from what we have all agreed and signed to before. That let us go back, revisit them and implement them. And then, because the situation has changed, we thought about some new ones which we could add, because we didn't have this issue about registration of political and regulation of political parties. So it's a new idea that we've brought, because we think that there is some emerging challenge that must be addressed.
Okay.
In these reforms, it was stated that we should find a way of even amending the constitution to give an upper ceiling of the number of MPs that we have, number of constituencies, because it appears every government comes and keeps gerrymandering and creating more constituencies without thinking about the burden of financing parliament on the taxpayer, because every single constituency you add has financial implications. Every one constituency you add takes away the resources that could build a school or a clinic. So if we are going to have a system where every party comes to power, they create more seats, so they can win, create more seats. You go to have 500 members of parliament in a small country. Each of them will have a Land Cruiser, each of them will have a police bodyguard, each of them will be paid, each of them will have a residence and all that. So you walk into a situation like what I used to call the GNTC syndrome, Ghana National Trading Company. That was a government's trading company which was buying goods and selling. Yeah. So government in those days, you are young people, they were government was operating stores.
Okay.
GNTC. You understand? Then, because it was state-owned, managers will keep employing their nephews, their children, and all that, and the staff was bloating till we came to a point where when you entered any GNTC shop, the number of staff was higher than the items that they were selling. So the more you employ and pay, the more you take away from your capital, which will be buying the goods, into payment of salaries. Okay. So you got to a point where you enter a GNTC shop, there are 20 cartons of corned beef, 20 sardines, and the workers there are more than that. You understand? So we cannot allow the parliament to go that way. Okay. Look at UK, the population of UK. Compare it with the number of MPs in UK. Look at America. Look at India. And then check MP population ratio. Okay. And you will see that we are spending too much money, wasting too much money in our effort to continue creating constituencies, continue creating these things. Where is it taking us to? So in part of the reform, we say there must be an upper ceiling, so that if the constitution says we should review the boundaries, we should be reviewing the boundaries as population keeps changing and so on, but not necessarily to increase the number of constituencies. Okay. The new chamber they were talking about, is it not because the number of seats have increased from 200 to 275?
275, yeah.
Okay. And if there is that loophole, and we are hearing that even after this population census, some effort is being made to add
new constituencies.
So if they add new constituencies, it makes the parliament unfit to hold all the MPs. They will say, let's go and build a new chamber block. Can't that chamber block money be used to build another teaching hospital or something? So these are the things in governance that you need to check. So we did all that. And many other reforms which we have not put there. So all that we are saying is that let's go back to things that we have all agreed upon to do without any controversy. Don't throw them away. You are back, you are in the commission, but you are inheriting the work of the commission. So where you have consensus about the way to move, you say, I don't like that one. I want to chart an area where there is controversy, where some people don't agree. Then I'll go and declare election results and say, I've done my work. Who are you serving? Are you not serving Ghanaians? So that is that. And then you see the whole area of collation.
That is a very controversial area.
It's also so we are tailoring the proposals to address the challenges that have been identified. It's not as if we are manufacturing something and putting it.
Is the collation about what happens? Is it limited to national elections, or what happens even at the polling station level? To the constituency level is where the collation starts.
Yes. The voting ends at polling stations.
Yeah.
Then that is end of voting.
Yeah.
The rest is collation.
Collation, yes.
So and then there is counting.
Yeah.
So once you are able to count, and during the counting process, it is easy to check the ballot papers and all those ballot accounting and so on. So there are systems to work on that one. Now moving the results from the constituency, the polling station where they have been declared. So in actual fact, the primary declaration of election results happened at the polling station. All the others are additions and secondary declarations.
Okay.
So no other declaration anywhere can be stronger than the declarations at the polling station. Okay. So if somebody picks wrong figures or changes figures along the line, and you have the primary data which contradicts what is being announced, then it tells you that what is being announced is not the will of the masses as expressed at the polling stations. Okay. So we had some of the reform proposals in the coalition, and then said you see, presidential election results should be reported and transmitted to the returning officer by polling station basis.
Okay.
And copies should be posted conspicuously at each polling station upon completion of the poll at the station.
Okay.
This is something that we agreed to way back in 2013,
That's from the IEA document.
Yes, and it found favor in the main work.
Okay.
That we final report that we submitted. There's no controversy about it.
So instead of faxing
if
constituency results, you are sending polling station results.
Precisely, we said Electoral Commission to procure handheld scanners, scan the pin sheet immediately. It has been prepared and signed by parties. Scan it, transmit it for the presidential, transmit it directly to the Electoral Commission headquarters, where you have the chairperson who is the returning officer of the presidential elections. As for presidential elections, the whole nation is one constituency.
Yeah.
Okay. So the results should be available polling station by polling station, the same way as the parliamentary election results are available polling station by polling station.
Okay.
So that when you are doing gazetting, publication and everything, we must see polling station by polling station so that anybody can total and find out if the final results actually reflects the will of the people.
So I can pick the results from the polling station myself, do my own calculation.
Precisely. If Radio Gold decides that we are going to run an election office, you send your people to pick the results, do their calculations. The outcomes you agree with what Electoral Commission. So that is what we call transparent elections. Okay. So this was what we proposed and accepted to be added to the constituency coalition. What did they deliver? This new commission, they threw this away and decided to establish regional coalition centers to bring more complications. We are already disagreeing about what is collated at
the constituency
level. and we want it to be segregated properly so we can track. Then you go and do another collation, which will bring more complications than even the constituency ones. So this regional collation, which came from nowhere, not discussed by anybody, not accepted by anybody, is an importation which did not work at all. It came to mar the beauty of our elections. And it is the first thing to be scrapped, so that we go back to the basics and find ways of transmitting results from polling station to national level. And then the presidential elections should be available polling station by polling station.
Okay.
And the total is this.
Okay.
So that if anybody adds and he gets a different total, there can be a basis of going to court.
And you say this proposal, when it was made somewhere in 2013, when all this thing started, all the political parties agreed
that is what they have signed. They've signed this.
The IEA,
yes, and then they signed this final document too. What's signed?
Yes, signed by all.
And so we're about the point of implementation. Charlotte Osei was about to order the handheld scanners.
Okay.
Then an issue was raised that we were too close to the 2016 elections, and that it will be difficult to train people about how to operate it. So let's shelve it. That is why we didn't use that system for 2016. Then you came, threw away these proposals, and decided to do regional collation, which has failed.
You think the regional collation system?
Yes, because we had figures to prove that in Eastern region, for instance, there were 2 regional collation sheets. 2. One, when we asked them, they said that, one was compiled and later mistakes were found on it, and so we call your people to come for the corrections to be made. They didn't come. And so we did the corrections, and so this is the corrected one. And the interesting thing is that what they claim to be the corrected one was much entered into their system much earlier than what everybody signed.
Oh, so that was what what
they imputed as the corrected one was much earlier than the one that was signed by everybody.
Oh, okay.
And the dates, the time of entering is noted exactly on the sheet. So it tells you that some results has been prepared and entered before you came to do the collation which everybody signed. And somewhere you drop what everybody signed and this one emerged. And you wanted to justify it by saying that, it was a corrected version. But how can the corrected version be an earlier one than the one you are supposing you are seeking to correct?
Okay.
So this is one of the problems. Printing of ballot papers and all that. We have made suggestions. And then how to monitor the printing house. We had a very good system of monitoring printing house. It was breached. And the results was that we intercepted more than 1 million ballot papers already printed. That one came to your attention, didn't it?
Yes.
And the Electoral Commission's response was that they printed them for the purpose in anticipation of a runoff. How can you print? A runoff involves 2 parties.
Yes.
2 leading parties. So if you're anticipating a runoff, you don't know which 2 candidates will be leading. Assuming you know, or you want to guess. The only guess you can make is NDC MPP. Is that not the case?
Yeah.
So why would you print ballot papers with 12 names and pictures and print MPP already? And when you are caught, you say that they were intended for this. In other jurisdictions, that printing house will be blackmailed and will not be allowed to participate in any printing again, because they have breached the trust on the elections. So there is a need for some of these things to be looked at. Okay. And then you have access to the media.
That has always been. When you say the media, are you talking about
state-owned media?
Okay, not
first.
Yeah, okay.
Private media second. Private media, government has no control over what they want to broadcast. Yeah. So government cannot say we are forcing Radio Gold to broadcast this, or we are forcing this to. That's not it. But if government descends to close down all the media houses that are perceived not to be singing from the same hymn book as that government, it raises an issue of media access. And I'm not competent to preach to Radio Gold about that. So I'll leave that one there. But you go to state-owned media, somewhere around 1990, was it 1996, thereabout, I've forgotten the date itself. There was a case filed at the High Court, MPP versus Ghana Broadcasting Corporation. Yeah. And the ruling was a directive that the state media should be made available, accessed by all political parties on equal basis. Mm-hmm. We were in power. The Media Commission was on our necks to ensure that this thing happens. It did. Now, surprisingly, those who went to court to pursue that right are in power now, and they have the ability to implement their own judgment. And it is not happening. Why shouldn't decent citizens question why it is not happening? So that is an issue we have raised, and we have asked that it should be pursued. Then,
so what you're asking for in that is the implementation of the decision of the court?
Yes, implementation of the decision. And this has nothing to do with Electoral Commission. Okay. It has everything to do with the Media Commission and all the other state agencies that have a role to play in making sure that, this High Court decision is implemented. Have we spoken about the appointment of commissioners?
You started and laid the foundation, yes, but you never talked about the proposal. So what are you proposing in that
We
direction?
are proposing that, the background of the proposal is that the president has varied powers of appointment. He appoints his ministers and so on, but there are independent commissions which are supposed to work independently, are also appointed by the president
NCC,
in consultation with the Council of State.
Okay.
We think that consultation with the Council of State is not sufficient.
Consultation with the Council of State?
With the Council is not sufficient.
Okay.
Because the composition of the Council of State is always like another arm of the presidency.
Okay.
The president appoints more than half of the members of the Council of State and other things. You understand? So if the president is going to consult Council of State, it effectively means consulting himself.
Okay.
There has never been any occasion under this Fourth Republic where the Council of State is heard to be advising the president against his own will.
Okay.
It hasn't happened. So in most cases, they just anticipate what the president will be thinking and say, we have advised you to do this. Okay. So that does not give sufficient credibility. And the good thing is that in the Constitution, these commissioners are likened to justices, judges, and their work is supposed to be independent they should not be directed, they should be they should not be partisan, and so on. So the appointment is completely different from ministerial appointments.
Yeah.
And even ministerial appointment, they are sent to Parliament. The appointment of Supreme Court judges are approved by Parliament after the President receives advice from Council of State and then the Judicial Council. They still submit the nominations to Parliament for approval. In this case, what we are suggesting is that after the President nominates with upon the advice of the Council of State, they should submit that nominee to Parliament for approval. And in the case of the chairperson, the requirement should be 2/3 majority of all the MPs.
Okay.
Because why? You know that since 1996, no single political party in Ghana has been able to garner 2/3 majority in the House.
No.
So whatever nomination will be approved by 2/3 majority, it must have a buy-in of all the major parties in Parliament. And I think that that should be the way we should be appointing Electoral Commission chairpersons. And they should be subjected to parliamentary vetting.
Okay.
Exposing whatever links they must be having with any party or government or anything must be of public record.
Okay.
And if anybody has any concerns, they must raise them and let the nominee address those concerns. At the end of the day, if the person is considered suitable, if the person has what it takes to chair Electoral Commission, it will show. And that is why in the case of the Supreme Court judges, in most cases, it is passed by consensus. Because if you are not sure of any bad thing about a nominee, you can't go there and be doing speculations only to offend the nominee, because one day you meet the person in court. You understand? So if we amended the Constitution, and fortunately, this is a proposal that has been canvassed by both MPP, civil society, and our good selves now. So it shouldn't be difficult for it to be implemented if we are all sincere.
This is not the first time. You are not the first people proposing.
No. We are not that. Go and look at your own records. Interviews you conducted during the time of the appointment of Charlotte Osei.
Yeah.
You hear all the big MPP people what they said, and all the proposals they made, including President Akufo-Addo. You understand? And then when Jim Mensah was appointed, you heard the commentary about us. So all of us feel that there's something wrong with the mode of appointment, and it must be dealt with. So, and that is our proposal. Now, the biggest issue has to do with the whole area of election security. And this attracted a lot of our recommendations on our reform proposals.
Let me ask one question, just for clarity. You are saying that in the case of the chairperson, it's 2/3. In the case of an ordinary commissioner, what happens? A simple majority?
We can settle on a simple majority.
But they all have to go through Parliament.
They have to go through Parliament
by the House.
And our approach to these proposals is that what we have proposed is a working document for the nation to digest, add, subtract, see how it can better be improved to serve the interests of the nation well. So if it comes to the amendment of the Constitution to provide for approval of Parliament, there will be exchange of views about what type of majority should be applied and all that. But our proposal is that at least the chairperson, or even including the three managing, commissioners,
yes,
chairperson and deputies, if there is any requirement, there should be stiffer
Okay.
than the others.
Because already Benefsin of the Daily Dispatch is already, I think that his headline today was, if it ain't broken, don't fix it.
Yes, but it is broken.
You disagree with him on the issue of the
But it is broken. That is why we are where we are. Is he not aware about the controversies that attend the appointment of chairpersons of the commission? Is he the only stranger in Jerusalem? We cannot be governed by empty headlines. We can all see and feel the reality. Is he telling us that there was no controversy when Charlotte Osei was appointed? Is he saying that there has not been controversy about the appointment of the current team, Jim Mensah, Bosman Nassari? Is that what he's telling us? Has there not been a running debate about the political affiliation of Bosman Nassari before the appointment? What are we talking about?
Okay, let's move on to the issue of security, because I think that was the major issue.
That's the major issue.
And I'm hoping that you would also address the issue of the EC saying we are not in charge of security on the day in question.
That is part of the.
Yeah.
That is
okay.
Part of it.
So let's deal with that.
You see, election security. What is the motivation for the breach or the causes of the breach of election security? It is the main cause is impunity. If you allow impunity to reign, then it will be very difficult to maintain election security anywhere.
Okay.
Every action, our attitude should be that every action must have consequences. So if you are given an assignment to do, however you perform that assignment, you must have to account for it. And if there are corrections to be made, those corrections should be made. We cannot have a system where we have a democracy, might is right. So if I'm strong and I'm able to arm twist anybody to declare results for me, then that stays.
Okay.
Then everybody will go and exercise and get strength rather than going to campaign to convince people.
Okay.
You understand? So what makes elections peaceful is that participants can rest assured when there is any cheating going on, that even if they do not take the law into their own hands to stop the cheating, at the end of the day, there's a credible system after the elections that will correct that cheating. But if you have a system where when cheating is going on, nobody is sure how the cheating can be corrected after the elections, everybody would think that the cheating must be corrected by whatever means possible and available to him at the point when the cheating is happening. So people take the law into their own hands. The people who may resort to their own designs may even be wrong in the assessment of what they consider to be cheating. But because there is no transparent process of dealing with these issues after the act, they say, no, I'm not taking chances. If I believe that there is cheating going on, let me go and use force. You understand? So the election security architecture should be designed in such a way that there is accountability at the end of the process, and there is a system of correcting anything that goes wrong through impunity.
Okay.
That is what will guarantee election security.
Okay.
Now, what do we have in Ghana? There is no specific law dealing with election security. So you have bits and pieces of provisions in laws scattered all over the place. And there is no law specifying the role of the security agencies, be it army, police, whatever.
So there's no clarity as to who takes charge.
And there is no law about who takes responsibility for prosecution after the elections. So Electoral Commission comes out to say that we are not in charge of security.
Okay.
So even if there was violence in the election, as for our election, it is the best we have ever held. So it is the police or somebody who failed their duty in election security. My goodness. When the Electoral Commission knows that their own laws stipulate that the presiding officer at the polling station is in charge of security during election days.
Is that the LI that they put
Yes,
together?
that is the provision now. So when you are at the polling station and the presiding officer feels that your presence there is unwarranted, he merely directs the police to remove you.
Okay.
And take you away, and it has to be done.
So the police report to him.
Yes.
They do what he wants.
They do what the presiding officer wants at the polling station. We have had an occasion where in Ofinso, the presiding officer at a particular polling station declared that he didn't want Honorable Damuale at the polling, who was our assigned polling agent for that polling station. Damuale was picked and locked up in cells, and the place was empty. It took us some time before we got a replacement, at which time, if anybody would have compromised the elections, it would have been compromised.
Because the presiding officer didn't want him there.
Yes. So if you have a biased presiding officer who says, remove this man, remove that man, remove that man, and then you come round to say that we are not responsible for security. What are you talking about?
That's a clear reporting line.
So why are they saying they are not in charge of security? And in any case, the breaches of security come about because of what people perceive to be wrong conduct of elections. Your key activity is the one that attracts the breaches of security. So if that activity were performed well, how can the security will be breached? So the breach tells you that the activity did not go well. So you can't divorce that one from your performance and say that we did well, and then security has to be. So that is the absence of a law specifying roles of who should do what, and after that, who should be in charge of prosecution, and so on. In some of the reforms, we actually recommended the beefing up, the creation of a legal department of the Electoral Commission, which will seek permission from the Attorney General to undertake prosecution of electoral offences. This was as far back as 2015. Nothing happened. This commission came, they didn't look at that, they just left it, and we ran into this major security mess. So, then number two, even one of the existing laws that deals with prosecution of electoral offences, tangentially, PNDC Law 284, Section 42 states that before an electoral offence could be prosecuted, you need the express permission of the Attorney General.
The Attorney General?
Yes.
An appointee of government?
A partisan Attorney General
has to
approve that, go and prosecute the people in Ayawaso West Wukong.
Well, before they are prosecuted?
Yes.
That's the law?
Yes, that is the law. So as far back as 2014, we all called for the amendment of this Article 42 in that law, so that criminal acts that are perpetrated during elections are treated as criminal acts and could be prosecuted by the police with their free hand. So there is this in there. You take it to court. What is the permission of the Attorney General? And most of the heinous acts are perpetrated by operatives of a government. And it is the government that has the Attorney General. So are you saying that he should go and then give permission for his party people or party people to be prosecuted before it is done? Wouldn't they have lobbied the president to remove that Attorney General? Because it is out of those misdeeds that the president won the election. So if you are going to punish us for helping the president to win the election, then you shouldn't be the minister there. You understand?
Okay.
So it is an area we are recommending should be taken off. It doesn't have to be Nana Akufo-Addo in power or Mahama in power or anybody in power. It is good for the health of our democracy.
So you want the usual process to be followed. Once something happens, the police take over, they investigate, they submit.
How should it be the case that here, if I slap you now, I could be arrested, I'll be prosecuted tomorrow. But if you are reporting for election at the polling station, I can come and slap you and get away. And unless the Attorney General gives permission, you can't prosecute me. So it has to be changed. And then also, we think that the sanctioning of EC staff should be a major activity, airing EC staff. Because you have, EC cannot maintain permanent staff in all the 30,000 plus polling stations. They will always rely on temporary recruited staff. Who may, and the recruitment process too, we have made a recommendation that there is a problem with the recruitment process, the transparency of the recruitment process, to make sure that the people you recruit to be the presiding officers and operatives, the judges at the polling station, are not captains of another team, one of the teams that are playing. So there are processes where recruitment happens. The data is displayed for people to object before recruitment, actual appointment letters are issued. This past election, the system was so crammed together that by the time available for objection was actually time not actually available, because the things were crammed together and there was no time. And then you see that many of the temporary staff were accused of belonging to one party or the other, which is wrong. So if there is a system where, if they say don't give 2 ballot papers to somebody, and you are found giving 2 ballot papers to somebody, after the next time you are in prison, then when you recruit them, they will take their duty seriously, because what they do can create problems for the whole country, so that they go and do the work. But if they know that if I do it, after all nothing happens, they will continue doing it. So how do you have transparent and clean, free and fair elections? You are not going to have it. So the sanctioning regime of both the EC's permanent staff, district officers and all that, and then the temporary staff, there must be a rigorous sanctioning regime for airing people. Take the example of some returning officer in Techiman South. When the controversies were raging, sent television cameras, General Secretary of our party, my good self, plus my team of lawyers, quoted the law to the returning officer. This law says that you must do collation, and after that, we are entitled to copy. Where is our copy? Say, I don't have any copy for you. And it was telecast for all Ghanaians to see, including their bosses in that crowd. He's still working. So next time, if somebody goes somewhere and says that, well, I'm declaring the results before the voting starts, what happens?
Okay.
So you have to look at those ones also. They are the ingredients of security breaches during elections.
The actions of people who are supposed to be supervising the elections.
They are all part of it. Then you have immediate post-ballot dispute resolution. We don't have any law or regulations about immediate post-ballot dispute resolution.
What does that mean?
What it means is that human beings are fallible. So immediately we pour and count, and we are adding. Somebody brings a wrong result, or electoral commission writes a wrong result and proceeds to announce something. And when we are all still there, we know these are the figures. What is announced is wrong. Then electoral commission's position is that once there is a declaration, nothing changes until you go to court. Knowing very well that it will take a while for you to even gazette your results and all that before. So this is an invitation for people to use force to get what they want.
Okay.
So at that time, they see the officer there as the problem. And in a fit of anger, if you leave them, they are prepared to even kill him. Because it is clear he's standing between them and justice. So during Afarijan's time, he developed conventions that were applied in resolving these immediate post-balloting disputes.
Okay.
And they worked. Whenever there was confusion, I can remember the case of Collins Dawda, for instance. Somebody decided not to declare the results, giving flimsy reasons, blah, 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 blah. And Farijan descended there, look at the figures and other things, and then made a declaration, and case was closed. There are many, many instances like that. When somebody sees that, oh, there's this swapping of results, they have put MPP results in front of NDC, and that was what affected this thing. So even though the person says this, it can be corrected. Why can't it be corrected? So, and let me give you one classical example. In the case of 2008 elections, where we had to go to time for a third round, the issues that came up and the way Afarijan handled those issues, I can bet my last peso that we're lucky that somebody like Afarijan was in charge. If it were to be this cerebral gene or this thing, this nation could have blown up. And it wasn't in the court that helped Afarijan to reach that. In fact, the practice of Afarijan those days was that if he says that, I'm ready with the results, he will notify all the political parties and say that in the next 3 hours, I think I have sufficient basis to declare my results. So if anybody has any outstanding issue, let them bring it up and let's look at it and see what can be done about it before we declare. This was precisely what happened during the 2008 elections. And MPP took advantage and presented a petition cataloging various concerns that they had and calling on the commission to suspend the declaration until these results are declared. Afarijan suspended.
Hey.
Why? What is the difference? Which is better and which is cheaper for the country? For the nation to go and spend 8 months, 3 months in court with everybody sitting on tenterhooks, and one day delay to see that everybody is clear about the results to be announced so that people accept it. Which is cheaper? And who was pushing Jim Mensah to rush to declare results? So in the case of Afarijan, he said, well. Copy of the letter has been given to Peace Council. So Afarijan invited Peace Council, invited NDC, invited MPP, invited the other participating political parties. 2 o'clock, we are going to meet. He actually suspended collation. You know, at some point he suspended collation. And then we met. Say, what is it that what is the problem? We looked at the problem together and were able to get over it and said, we have ring fence this problem area. Let's continue with the collation.
Okay.
Then the evidence you have about the ring fence constituencies, go and bring them. The following morning we were back in the meeting. We met with what we considered to be our evidence about some 13 polling constituencies in Ashanti region. He looked at it and told us in the face that, look, none of those constituencies have a complete set of the pink sheets, so they cannot stand as evidence to contradict this one. There is no time, so I can't go into the actual details of what went wrong. And it was here, Radio Gold, that we started the announcement that something was going wrong. So we should do something. Afarijan listened to the media, to concerns of civil society, suspended to go about problem hunting. Then after we got over the immediate collation challenges, we came to a point where the results were almost all ready. And we said, okay, even if these 13 constituencies whose results we are disputing, if we accept them, it still makes NDC the winner of the elections by some 30,000 or so. So go ahead and declare. If we win by 1 vote and winning by 1 million, we are still the winners. So we are not going to continue pursuing this 13 constituencies case. Let's add the figures that have been brought, which we claim are not the right figure, bloated figures. But we are conceding, let's add. Because we had done our calculation and realized that even with the addition, we will still win by something. Because we actually won that election by more than 100,000. But because of these bloated figures and so on, which Afarijan said, because of the evidence, paucity of the evidence, he cannot, so he'll grant it to MPP. Let us move forward. So, okay. Then after we put all those figures, took account of those figures, we were still leading. We had won by 30,000 votes. But my constituency, the runoff election could not happen because of the machinations of MPP in my constituency. I didn't understand the motivation of making sure that Time would not participate in the runoff. Later, I got to know that it was part of their grant scheme. So after we got to where we were, then MPP said no. But Time has a registered population of 54,000. And the NDC is winning by 30,000. Supposing we go to Time and everybody in Time votes for us, we would have cancelled the NDC 30,000 and we'll be leading and we will win by the 24,000. So unless we go to time, we will not accept the declaration. Sound logic.
Yeah.
You see? So Afajan says, well, what is your take on this NDC? We say, well, the logic is sound. So we are ready for it. That was what took us to time. And maybe they didn't know at that time because I used to be MP for Wenchi West. It was a constituency under Wenchi, so it was called Wenchi West. But it has since been created into a district called Tyne. So they didn't know that it was my constituency they were referring to. And I said, well, if you want a battle in my home ground, let's go. So we went and then did Tyne. And whilst we were at Tyne, and they picked intelligence that there was no way they could take over Tyne, then they decided to now come and use and abuse a court process. They did all they could. In fact, the controversies between President Kufuor and Nana Akufo-Addo began from that Tyne thing, because they met on their way to Tyne. They met in Buzier's residence in Wenchi. And Akufo-Addo was blaming President Kufuor of not using his incumbency to turn the results with this slim margin. Because President Kufuor had announced that as for him, he's retiring. So anybody who wins, he'll make sure that he will hand over to that person. That has been the controversy, the beginning of the controversy between Akufo-Addo camp and President Kufuor camp. And it has raged up to today. And so when we're going into this election, and they were acquiring weapons, training militia, and so on, I knew clearly that now Akufo-Addo himself is in charge. Is he not going to do what he had recommended President Kufuor to do? So that is what happened. So we are saying that there must be a immediate post-balloting conflict resolution thing. If that thing existed, Techima would not be in court by now.
Sending West would have been dealt with.
Sending West would have been dealt with quickly. Sehuyo also will not be in court now. There are many areas that will not be in court. It would have been so 16 cases pending in various cases, and you still think that that is the best election. And then we are proposing that post-election adjudication is also very, very important. After all these initial ADRs have failed, and we have to go to court, what type of court are we going? And what procedures are we going to use?
Okay.
The Supreme Court had made some progress in as far as presidential elections and cutting down the time is concerned.
Time spent there. Yeah.
But that is not complete. We are suggesting that the Chief Justice should designate, after election, Chief Justice should designate special courts that will deal with post-election conflicts.
Okay.
So they spend their full time doing it. And those judges who will be presiding would have been taken through training in elections management to understand how our elections are run. So that when they are in the chair adjudication, they understand the process and how it works.
Okay.
You understand?
Yeah.
And then certain high court procedures that are applied, like this absurd ruling, which said that if you are in court and you decide not to talk, it is your human rights, you shouldn't talk. Why should it apply to a state official who has been assigned an important duty like elections and he is being called to account, can that state official continue to occupy that office and declare himself unaccountable to the population, no matter what his private civil rights are? So we must have a law that will make the Electoral Commission a compellable witness in any election dispute, because they are in charge. They must talk. They must explain the results they are handing over to us. You understand?
Yeah.
So those are some of the things we think ought to be done if these things are handled properly. The law about election security, who does prosecution, who is responsible for what, sanctioning of airing election staff, immediate post-ballot, resolution of issues before court and all that, and then the publication of the results, full results, polling station by polling station, as far as the presidential elections are concerned, in the Gazette, so that everybody can do this. It will help. So there are a lot of other minor suggestions, but
the
in
proposals
the main,
that have been made,
many of the things were taken from agreements that all of us have reached before and signed to, which we are calling on the Commission to implement.
After listening to you, only one question comes to mind. Everything you've said, because you spoke highly of Afarijan, his leadership, which means that these things were these issues were there.
Those
but he
were
managed
things that were, some of them did not manifest because of some initiatives.
A lot of them manifested.
That was what made Ghana's election to be seen by outsiders as the shining star in Africa. Now, I'm not sure anybody will hold that opinion outside Ghana. Again, we have come back more than 30 years down.
So the retrogression is due to management.
Sure. The way, the attitude of the Commission towards stakeholders and all that. And to tell you what, I didn't talk about IPAC, the way IPAC operated in the past. The IPAC did not have any legal backing, but the strength of the conventions we developed, and we all committed ourselves to those conventions, were able to achieve monumental reforms through the IPAC, to the extent that other countries are copying our model of IPAC. And so we didn't feel the absence of a legal provision for IPAC, legal backing for IPAC at all, because everybody was committed to upholding the conventions. For instance, we all agreed that each political party should bring 3 representatives
To IPAC.
to IPAC.
Okay.
And in fact, some political parties even could abuse it. But because IPAC was not a forum for voting, even if your numbers are more, we don't care. It's like whatever we agreed on will eventually be propagated outside. So then if many people come and listen, that's okay with us. So, and the procedures at IPAC, many of the suggestions for reform at IPAC came from stakeholders. Key among them were political parties. Less than 1% of the reforms that have taken place from 92 to date were initiated by Electoral Commission itself. All the proposals came from stakeholders. And so when a stakeholder puts forward a proposal, we don't shoot it down claiming that we are Electoral Commission, so you have brought a proposal, we are not bound to listen to you, can go to hell and remain there forever. That attitude is what has brought us where we are now. So in those days, all the proposals will be accepted, and then we take them and then try to develop consensus around as many of them as possible.
Okay.
Those we are able to develop consensus around, we adopted. Those that we could not get consensus immediately around, we flag for further discussions in future. And that's how we have. IPAC was the one that was used to adopt transparent ballot boxes in place of opaque ballot boxes. Voter registration, provision of ID card, picture-based ID card, and then picture in the voters register, biometric, and name them. All these things were proposals from stakeholders. And in fact, Electoral Commission was the first to accept that without stakeholder participation, they cannot undertake that onerous responsibility of conducting elections transparently and fairly, which will be acceptable by everybody. Okay. So they need the stakeholders to buy into it. And that's how. So IPAC was not formed by me. It was formed by Electoral Commission. If you know you don't need IPAC, why do you form it? And even this reconstituted commission, when they adopted an attitude against this IPAC, they didn't end it there. They still felt the need for stakeholder participation. So what did they do? They went ahead to form a committee of eminent persons to advise them. Didn't that happen? So their own conduct suggests that there is the stakeholder participation is critical to the success of their performance of their duties. So if we say let us regulate the stakeholder inputs very well, are we asking too much? So membership of IPAC, how IPAC was constituted, at some point, political parties by themselves with a certain majority could call IPAC, and the Electoral Commission will have to come and organize that IPAC and sit. These were the conventions, and we were not voting. Now you change that IPAC into a forum for one-way information giving. We are the Electoral Commission, these are our proposals. Finito. We have the power, constitutional power to do what we want to do. But let us discuss. You spend some 5 hours discussing. Oh, we have heard all the discussion, but we are going to implement what we propose. So why did you go to sit there? Complete waste of time. So that is why we said, if you don't need us, we will not force ourselves on you. But unfortunately, the impression has been created outside because of the way Farijan, Adenze Kanga and co developed this concept. The impression has been created outside the commission that when there's a proposal and the commission comes to announce it after IPAC, it means all the parties agreed. So they will lure you to go and sit there. Then they bring something and say, this is what we are going to implement. Then they announce it after IPAC meeting and say, all of you were there. When you say, I don't agree with it, but while you were part of it, you were sitting there. So we felt that, no, you cannot take us for a ride. So you choose what, we'll give you what you want. If you think that you only need us there to give us information, then these are our email addresses. Okay. When you take your decisions, please inform us.
Then how do you feel about it?
We will also see you as a state organization with exclusive responsibility of running free and fair elections. So anytime we feel that there is a need for us to input into your work, we will bring the proposals to you.
Okay. So that's how come you took it to
That's
them.
why we because yes, we are citizens, and if we identify what is good for Ghana and we keep quiet, we are being bad citizens. So that is what we. So finally, those who are saying that, and let me give credit to Electoral Commission. When we sent this thing to them, they wrote back acknowledging receipt and assured us that they will be studying it and they will get back to us, which was very encouraging, which marked some clear departure from the way they had been doing things.
Okay.
So we think that maybe the Adan forum we attended is beginning to yield some results.
Okay.
Then we sent copies to all the other stakeholders,
Okay.
including our key partner, MPP. So they responded that they think we should bring the suggestions to IPAC. Then after Electoral Commission has responded wonderfully that they are steady and they will get back to us, we started hearing some commentary in the media that Electoral Commission has directed us to table those proposals at IPAC. Meanwhile, they have written a letter to us in different terms.
So the EC
So we
never
begin
wrote it
asking
down.
ourselves, is it true that EC has said we should do this, which is different from what they have written to us? Would they write to us and say something else in the media and expect us to trust them? Or is it the case that somebody is doing a mischief by misquoting Electoral Commission out there? We don't know, but we think that the documentary evidence that we have, the letter they have written to us, we are entitled to rely on that. So any other response that is being circulated in the media, we will leave it as not coming from the Electoral Commission. But to those who are saying bring it to IPAC, I get the impression that they don't understand how the system works. What is the secretariat of IPAC? IPAC is not an institution which is separate from Electoral Commission.
Okay.
IPAC is a meeting that is called by Electoral Commission. And they put together the agenda of IPAC. So when any stakeholder brings a suggestion which they think should be discussed by all other stakeholders, it is their responsibility to put it on the agenda and bring it to a meeting for discussion.
Okay.
We don't dictate the agenda for IPAC. And they have acknowledged receipt. If they think that this is something that should be discussed at Forum A, Forum B, Forum C, it is for them to act. So we are waiting for their responses.
A couple of things before I let you go, because there are a couple of questions that are coming in. But this one actually have to do with... Yes, we are done. We are done. But just one question. Habib Bantu says, Sana, good morning. Please kindly ask General if the brute force is used in 2024 and which the MPP is planning to use, what will the NDC do? Are we going to say because of one Ghana, the NDC will sit aloof again?
What I'm seeing gives me the comfort that 2020 will not be repeated in 2024. Because you see, Ghana is a very important member of the international community. And what happened in Ghana, leading to all the controversies and these botched elections and our decision to boycott IPAC. The international community has, and other stakeholders have not been sitting aloof. That is why I mentioned the Adan consensus, Adan forum. Adan forum happened because the UNDP, UN through UNDP, and the special representative of the General Secretary to, I think, Africa or something, in Chambers.
Yeah.
And then ECOWAS, collaboration with ECOWAS, Africa Union, and then the Commonwealth Secretariat, plus the National Peace Council, organize this first ice-breaking engagement in Adan. And the major political parties participated. Peace Council participated. Everybody, we sat on a table, undergo some exercise to find out what is wrong with the system and how it can be fixed.
Okay.
So at least we're able to come out with a communique, the Adan communique, which represented some consensus way of, moving out of this quagmire.
Okay.
So we have trust in that process, that eventually the process will be able to deal with some of the reforms and so on. So we are going into those discussions not empty-handed. So we had to prepare position paper. And so in many respects, these are proposals represents our position on the way forward to get out of this mess. So I'm sure that if that process, which has a buy-in, in fact, in that meeting, the Secretary General of Commonwealth herself came to participate in Adan. It tells you how important they see a quick solution to this Ghanaian electoral crisis problem. So I'm sure that before 2024,
things will change.
Good sense will prevail, and we'll get back to our winning ways as the Black Star of Africa.
Because there are a lot of your supporters who are very skeptical. Because Samuel Ivan-Sotah, who is in the UK, says, let General know that if Akufo-Addo wanted Kufuor to use incumbency to change things for him and NPP, then they shouldn't forget about what he will do in 2024 elections. He had already publicly said under his foot to hand over to NDC, especially JDM. So they have to up their plans. So they are very skeptical about the fact that this optimism you have.
They have every reason to be skeptical. But we as leaders, knowing what we do, should not join them in that game of skepticism. And I'm sure that when the results come to show, they will appreciate that national interest is always paramount.